Lily, HR needs to see you. Those were the words my manager delivered on a Tuesday morning, his expression unreadable. My stomach dropped. I had never been called into HR before, not once in my 7 years at the company. I wasn't perfect, but inappropriate behavior? That wasn't me. I walked down the long corridor toward the HR offices, my heels echoing on the polished floor. My mind raced. Had I accidentally offended someone in a meeting? Sent an email with the wrong tone? By the time I reached the frosted glass doors with human resources printed in bold letters, my palms were damp. Inside, Iris, the HR manager, was waiting. Her smile was polite, but didn't reach her eyes. She gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "Thank you for coming in, Lily. We need to discuss your inappropriate comment during yesterday's strategy call." I blinked. My what? She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a typed transcript with a section highlighted in neon yellow. My heart pounded as I read the words. Vulgar, dismissive remarks about our regional VP, comments about her personal life and appearance. My breath caught. "This wasn't me," I said, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. "I didn't say this." I barely spoke during that call. Iris tapped her pen against the folder. "3 employees reported hearing you. They claim it happened when the video feed briefly cut out. The audio still captured everything." "That's impossible," I insisted. "Check the recording." Her expression hardened. "That segment of the recording is corrupted." My chest tightened, conveniently corrupted. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at her. Then something clicked in my mind. This wasn't about an inappropriate comment. This was about control. I had made enemies, without meaning to. 2 weeks earlier, I had raised concerns in a department meeting about our expansion project. The data didn't look right, and I'd spoken up. My supervisor, Marissa, had smiled thinly and told me to trust leadership. Since then, the atmosphere around me had shifted. Friendly colleagues suddenly kept their distance. Information I needed was accidentally left off email threads. And now this. Before I could say anything else, the door opened without a knock. The air in the room seemed to change instantly. Evan Miller, our CEO, walked in. His presence filled the space before he even spoke. Tall, composed, his sharp eyes flicked from me to Iris. "Sir, we're in the middle of a disciplinary," Iris said quickly, smoothing the sleeve of her blazer. "Actually," Evan said, his voice calm but carrying authority that made the room shrink around him. "That's not why we're here." Iris froze. I swear the color drained from her face so fast she looked like she might faint. She reached to pull the folder back, but Evan picked it up before she could touch it. "Miss Daniels has been working directly with my office for the past month," he said, sliding into the chair next to me. Not across from me, but beside me. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "What?" I hadn't spoken to the CEO once in my entire career. Iris's voice wavered. I don't understand." "You will," he replied. Then he turned to me. "Lily, would you mind waiting outside for a moment? And on your way, please ask Lane from legal to join us. Tell her it's time for what we discussed." "What we discussed?" My mind spun. I hadn't discussed anything with him. But I nodded, stood, and left the room on shaky legs. The door clicked shut behind me. Through the frosted glass, I could see their silhouettes. Evan leaning forward, Iris recoiling back into her chair. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Who was Lane? What plan was unfolding? My heart raced as I replayed Iris's words, the transcript, the accusations. Someone wanted me out. Someone powerful. But why was the CEO stepping in on my behalf? I couldn't decide what scared me more. The accusation that could destroy my career? Or the unknown reason the most powerful man in the company had just placed himself at my side? And that, I realized, was only the beginning. because the truth behind this HR summons was about to reveal a game being played at a level I had never imagined. I stood in the hallway outside the HR office, my pulse hammering so hard it made my vision blur. I pressed my palms against my thighs to stop them from shaking. Through the frosted glass, I could see only faint shapes. Evan leaning forward, Iris rigid in her chair. I had no idea what was happening. When I'd walked into that room minutes earlier, I was sure my career was over. Now the CEO himself had intervened, pulled up a chair beside me, and told me to fetch someone named Lane from legal. Lane. I scrolled through my contacts, searching. Nothing. My hands were trembling so much I almost dropped my phone. Just then, a text flashed across the screen from an unknown number. I hesitated. My instincts screamed to run the other way, to get as far from this building as possible. But something stronger, curiosity, maybe survival, pushed me forward. The elevator ride to the third floor felt endless. When the doors opened, a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair stood waiting outside conference room D. She extended her hand. Lane Perkins. You must be Lily. Her handshake was firm, steady, the kind of grip that said she'd seen everything and didn't scare easily. Please come in, she said. Inside, the blinds were drawn and a thick folder rested on the table. Lane sat down, motioning for me to take the seat across from her. I imagine you're confused, she said. That's one word for it, I muttered, still struggling to keep my voice steady. HR just accused me of saying something I didn't. Then the CEO shows up, and now I'm meeting with you. What's going on? Lane leaned back, studying me carefully. Let me ask you first. Have you noticed anything unusual in the last few weeks? Things that didn't feel right? I gave a humorless laugh. Unusual? You mean besides being accused of harassment out of nowhere? Yes. My supervisor has been shutting me out. Projects I used to lead, she reassigns to others. I find out about meetings after they happen. And 2 weeks ago, I raised concerns about our expansion into Southeast Asia, about the regulatory data not lining up. And since then, it's like I've been invisible. Lane nodded slowly, as if I'd just confirmed something. That matches what we've seen. For months, we've been monitoring irregularities tied to your department, budget inconsistencies, safety testing delays, suppressed reports. At first, it looked like sloppy management, but the deeper we looked, the clearer it became. This was deliberate. My skin prickled. Deliberate how? Lane slid the folder across to me. Inside were spreadsheets, emails, and internal memos with names I recognized. My supervisor, Marissa, her 2 closest allies, and even a mid-level director. The documents showed falsified compliance reports, adjusted timelines, even internal discussions about minimizing fallout if certain safety failures were discovered abroad. I flipped through the pages, my mouth going dry. This can't be real. It's very real, Lane said quietly. And your name keeps coming up. My head snapped up. What? Why me? Because you asked the wrong questions, Lane replied. You spotted issues no one else was supposed to see. They couldn't risk you taking those concerns higher, so they tried to discredit you before you could cause trouble. The fabricated transcript in HR? That was their safety net. If you became a problem, they'd have grounds to terminate you and bury your reputation. I sat back, dizzy. Pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The sudden cold shoulders, the missing meeting invites, the technical difficulty during the conference call. It hadn't been paranoia. It had been a setup. But why is the CEO involved? I asked. Why step in for me? Because you're not the only one who noticed, Lane said. A quiet audit began 3 months ago after unusual expenses appeared in the product safety budget. Evan has been personally overseeing it. When you raised concerns in that meeting, it confirmed what we already suspected. He's been waiting for the right moment to act. I pressed my hand against my forehead. So what happens now? Lane's expression softened slightly. Now we build the case. With your help, the weight of her words hit me. My whole body tensed. Why me? I asked again, though the answer was already obvious. Because you've seen it firsthand. You've lived the retaliation. Your testimony, paired with these documents, gives us something undeniable. I stared down at the folder. My name wasn't just a line on those pages. It was a target. Lane leaned forward. This isn't just about saving your job, Lily. It's about protecting the company, our clients, and, let's be blunt, people's lives. If these products hit the market the way Marissa and her team have designed them, the consequences could be catastrophic. I swallowed hard. You're asking me to go against my own boss. I'm asking you to tell the truth, Lane corrected. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Finally, I nodded. Okay. I'll help Lane close the folder, a faint look of relief crossing her face. Good. Then it begins now. Your HR meeting isn't what it seems. It's bait. While Evan keeps them occupied, we're preparing for the next step. And it's going to be messy. The word made my stomach twist. But deep down, under the fear, something else stirred. A flicker of resolve. If they wanted to ruin me, they'd chosen the wrong person. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the yellow highlighted transcript Iris had slid across the table. The words I supposedly said. The way she looked at me like I was already guilty. And then Evan's voice, calm but heavy with meaning. That's not why we're here. By morning, I felt like my body was running on caffeine and adrenaline alone. When I got to the office, everything felt different. People stopped talking when I walked by. A few whispered. I couldn't tell if they had heard about the HR meeting or if I was just imagining it. Either way, I kept my head down. At 9:45 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Lane. Conference room E, 10 sharp. Bring your laptop. I took the longest route upstairs, my mind churning. Was this really happening? Was I really about to help expose my own boss? Lane and Evan were already in the room when I arrived. Both of them looked calm in a way that made me feel even more nervous. Sit, Evan said. He wasn't cold, but he wasn't friendly either. His tone was that of a man who had no time for wasted words. I set my laptop on the table, trying not to fidget. Lane slid a USB stick across to me. Plug this in. We need your access. My throat went dry. Access to what? Your department's shared drive, she said. Files that Marissa has locked under project permissions. You still have secondary clearance. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard. If she finds out I opened those files... She will, Evan interrupted. But by the time she does, it won't matter. The certainty in his voice was both terrifying and strangely reassuring. I swallowed, then inserted the USB and logged in. The shared drive opened. Search Asia Compliance, Lane instructed. Dozens of folders appeared. Many were innocuous, budget spreadsheets, marketing slides, but a few were tagged with innocuous names like Archive 2024 and Vendor Notes. Lane pointed. Open that one. Inside were PDFs of lab reports. I scrolled through, my stomach sinking. Failures highlighted in red. Flammability ratings, toxicity thresholds, structural tests. These are the results I tried to show in the meeting, I whispered. She told everyone they were preliminary. They weren't preliminary, Lane said flatly. They were final. I clicked another folder. This one stopped me cold. A spreadsheet filled with numbers, color-coded in green and red. At the top, the title, Risk Matrix, Market Adaptation Strategy. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lane leaned closer. Read the columns. I scanned down. The categories made my skin crawl. projected consumer complaints, estimated injury cases, probable fatalities. Next to them were dollar figures weighing acceptable costs against expected revenue. I pushed my chair back. This is sick. Evan spoke for the first time since I'd logged in. This is fraud and negligence and criminal if regulators see it. My chest tightened. And my name is all over these files because I had access. That's why we needed you here, Lane said, her voice steady. We need your account, your testimony. Proof that you raised concerns and were silenced? I stared at the screen, fighting the urge to cry. If I do this, Marissa will destroy me. She already tried Lily, Evan said, his eyes locking on mine. She already set the trap. What you saw in HR was her endgame. The only way out is through. The words hit me like a hammer. He was right. I could walk away, resign, pretend none of this existed. But then those products would ship, and if something went wrong, I'd know I had stayed silent. I exhaled shakily. What do you need me to do? Lane slid another document across the table. A whistleblower protection agreement. Legal language guaranteeing immunity from retaliation and a continued role within the company. Sign this first, she said. Then we build the timeline. Every meeting you were excluded from, every report you flagged, every threat or retaliation. We need the story as clean as possible. I held the pen, my hand trembling. Once I signed, there was no turning back. My career would never be the same, but maybe that was the point. I put the pen to paper. Okay. Lane gave a single nod, as if she'd expected nothing else. Good. Because tomorrow, Marissa presents to the board. And you'll be in the room. The blood drained from my face. In the room? As in, Evan said, ready to confirm what she denies. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The boardroom was the last place I wanted to be. But then I thought of the spreadsheet, the red numbers, the casual math of human lives. I tightened my grip on the pen. Then let's do it. Lane gathered the papers calmly, as though this were just another Tuesday. Evan stood, buttoning his jacket. Be ready, Lily. Tomorrow, everything changes. I watched them leave, the door clicking shut behind them. Alone in the silent room, I stared at my reflection in the dark computer screen. I wasn't just fighting for my job anymore. I was fighting for the truth. The next morning felt like walking into a storm I couldn't see but could sense in the air. My coffee tasted bitter. My hands trembled when I tried to hold my notes, and every corridor in the office seemed unusually quiet, as though people were waiting for something to happen. At 10 a.m., Lane appeared outside my cubicle. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Boardroom. Now I followed her to the executive floor, where the glass doors and leather chairs looked like they belonged to another world. My heels clicked on the marble floor as we passed assistants whispering into headsets. Lane opened the heavy wooden doors to the boardroom and gave me a look that was equal parts reassurance and warning. Inside, the room was already full. 12 board members sat around the massive table, papers neatly stacked in front of them. Evan stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding but controlled. And there, at the far end, was Marissa. She looked flawless, as always, hair perfectly styled, cream-colored suit pressed to perfection, a faint smile playing on her lips. She didn't acknowledge me as I slipped quietly into a seat at the back. To her, I wasn't supposed to exist today. Thank you all for coming, she began, projecting confidence. I'll be presenting the progress of our Asian expansion strategy. Her voice was smooth, her slides polished, her delivery calculated. She clicked through revenue projections, growth curves, partnership opportunities. Anyone who didn't know better would have believed every word, but I knew better. My palms dampened as she shifted to compliance. As you can see, we are on track to meet all regulatory benchmarks ahead of schedule, she said, gesturing at a chart with upward lines. A knot tightened in my chest. It was a lie, a complete fabrication. One of the board members, Graham, cleared his throat. And what about the safety tests? We've heard concerns raised by the regional offices. Marissa didn't miss a beat. Preliminary tests suggested delays, but subsequent testing confirmed full compliance. There's no cause for concern. The room hummed with quiet nods. She was pulling it off, until Evan raised a hand. Before we move on, there are additional attendees joining us today. The doors opened. 3 unfamiliar faces entered: a Japanese regulator, a Taiwanese safety board representative, and a South Korean consumer protection official. My breath caught. I hadn't known they'd be here. Neither had Marissa, judging by the sudden stiffness in her shoulders. What a surprise, she said smoothly, though her voice carried the faintest tremor. We welcome your expertise. The regulators nodded politely, but their eyes were sharp, watchful. Marissa clicked forward to another slide, speaking faster now, glossing over details. She was trying to stay ahead, but the questions started almost immediately. Your timeline assumes expedited approval, Miss Chen from Taiwan said, adjusting her glasses. On what basis? Our North American certifications, Marissa replied. Those standards are not equivalent, Mr. Park from South Korea said, his tone cool. Beads of sweat appeared at Marissa's temple. Before she could respond, Lane stood from her chair at the side of the room. With the board's permission, I'd like to present supplemental documents. Evan nodded once. Proceed. Lane connected her tablet to the projector. In a second, the polished charts disappeared, replaced by something uglier, the risk matrix I had seen the day before. The room went silent. This spreadsheet, Lane said evenly, outlines a strategy to bypass Asian safety regulations by releasing non-compliant products. It includes calculated projections of consumer injuries and fatalities weighed against profit margins. The regulators leaned forward, their expressions dark. Murmurs rippled through the board. Marissa's smile faltered. This is a mistake. I've never seen that document before. Lane swiped to another screen. An email chain with Marissa's name in the sender field, discussing how to manage unfavorable test results. This can't be authentic, Marissa snapped. Someone has manipulated these files. The metadata confirms authenticity, Lane replied calmly, as do statements from 3 members of your team who cooperated with our inquiry. I glanced at the front row where Devin and another colleague sat. Devin stared at the table, refusing to look at her. The silence between them said everything. The boardroom air grew heavy. Graham's face was grim. The regulators whispered to each other, their voices sharp and urgent. Evan finally spoke. Miss Daniels. It took me a moment to realize he was addressing me. My legs felt like lead as I stood and walked to the front. Every eye in the room was on me. You raised concerns about these safety issues weeks ago, did you not? Graham asked. My throat was dry, but I forced my voice steady. Yes, I brought test results to Marissa directly. She dismissed them. I raised them again in the conference call with Regional Director Preston. The feed cut out before I could finish, and Marissa contradicted me. Afterwards, I received a threat on my car windshield telling me to keep quiet. Gasps rippled across the table. The regulators exchanged sharp looks. I continued. Yesterday, I was called into HR with a fabricated transcript accusing me of making inappropriate comments. That was the plan, to discredit me before I could expose what I'd found. Marissa stood abruptly, her voice sharp. This is character assassination. She's bitter. She's making things up. Lane cut her off. Then perhaps you can explain why your login credentials accessed these files repeatedly over the past 2 months. We have server logs. For the first time, Marissa had no words. Her face drained of color, and the silence was deafening. Evan's voice broke it. Security will escort Marissa and her associates out, effective immediately. The boardroom erupted in low voices. The regulators leaned in, demanding assurances. I just stood there, heart hammering, trying to process what had happened. As security moved forward, Marissa turned her head toward me. Her eyes burned with fury, but beneath it I saw something else. Fear. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like relief. Not because it was over, but because the truth was finally out in the open. The boardroom emptied slowly, voices buzzing with shock and urgency. The regulators left with thick folders under their arms, their faces grim. Security escorted Marissa, Devin, and Kenzie down the hall. I watched them go in silence, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. For weeks I had been gaslit, undermined, and nearly destroyed. Now the lies were out in the open, and yet standing there I didn't feel triumphant. I felt drained. Lane approached me first. "You did well," she said quietly. I gave a shaky laugh. I thought my legs were going to give out. "They didn't," she replied. "That's what matters." Evan came over next, his expression unreadable. "Miss Daniels, your courage saved this company from catastrophe. The board will discuss next steps, but know this. Your integrity has been noticed." I nodded, unable to find words. The next few days were a blur. News spread quickly through the company. First whispers, then full-blown rumors. By the end of the week, everyone knew Marissa and her allies had been fired for misconduct. Departments that had once been tightly controlled by her circle now operated in uneasy silence. People avoided eye contact in hallways, unsure of who had been loyal to whom. HR called me back in, but this time there was no transcript, no accusation. Instead, Iris, her face stiff and pale, read from a prepared statement acknowledging that the complaint against me had been fabricated. She didn't apologize directly, but the humiliation in her voice was clear. I left the office that day with my head a little higher, but the relief didn't last long, because fallout, I realized, isn't clean. A week later, I got a call from my sister. "Lily, your name is in the business pages. Some article about corporate corruption. Your company's all over it." I opened the link and there it was. A piece about regulatory failures, whistleblowers, and corporate greed. My name wasn't printed, but enough detail was there for colleagues and industry insiders to guess. I read the comments section, saw strangers debating whether people like me were heroes or troublemakers. My stomach twisted. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the article, wondering if I'd ruined my future. Who would want to hire the woman who nearly brought her own company down? When I finally slept, my dreams were restless. The next morning, Lane appeared at my desk. "Board wants to see you." I followed her back upstairs, nerves buzzing. In the boardroom, Graham cleared his throat and gestured for me to sit. "Miss Daniels," he began, "the company owes you a debt. Your persistence prevented dangerous products from entering markets where lives would have been at risk. The board has voted unanimously to create a new division, International Compliance and Product Safety. We would like you to lead it." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "Lead it?" "Yes," he said. "You'll report directly to the board. Independent of middle management. You'll have authority to review safety protocols across all regions. We believe you've proven yourself capable." My chest tightened. I don't know what to say. "Say yes," Evan said simply. I did. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my career. Rebuilding trust, reviewing mountains of data, facing skeptical managers who still saw me as a threat. But piece by piece, things shifted. I implemented anonymous reporting channels for employees. I set up quarterly audits with outside firms. And slowly, people began to understand that raising concerns wasn't career suicide anymore. One evening, months later, I sat in my new office overlooking the city. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry, no signature, but I knew who it was. Marissa." I stared at the message for a long time, then set the phone down without replying. Some apologies come too late. That night, I went home and told my sister everything. She listened, then asked, "So, was it worth it?" I thought about the sleepless nights, the fear, the humiliation. I thought about the spreadsheet calculating lives against profit margins. I thought about the regulators who now supported us, and the young employees who quietly thanked me in hallways. "Yes," I said finally. "Some fights are worth having, even if you don't know how they'll end." Because in the end, it wasn't just about saving my job. It was about something bigger. The simple truth that integrity isn't expensive. It's priceless. And sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to stay silent.